Hi, Tami. How are you?
Hi, Belinda. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us at Perfect Child. We're here with Tami Ordoñez of the Tutors Table. And I'm going to start with your bio.
Okay.
All right. Tami is driven by an insatiable desire for knowledge. She's an adventurous spirit and has a passion for dance. She has spent a lifetime studying how we humans learn, make connections, and move our bodies. Years of classroom teaching in Waldorf schools, charter schools, and homeschool enrichment centers have given her a highly developed intuition for what students need and how to really teach them. She continues to develop connected ways of learning through private tutoring and in microclasses. Whether tutoring math, writing, science, or history, supporting organization and study strategies, or preparing students for SAT, AP, ISEE, or SSAT tests, the same methodology underlies it all. What is our destination? Where are we now? And how do we get from here to there? How's that for your bio?
Great.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Not that I think of at the moment off the top of my head. I mean, that suits it just right.
Okay, great. So going off of the last sentence that I just read, what is our destination? Where are we now? And how do we get from here to there? I would like to talk about the how this statement is pretty much the groundwork for when you create a homeschooling curriculum. I believe that is sort of what we talked about when you and I talked about creating a homeschooling curriculum for us. So can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I'm a firm believer in start with the end in mind. So when I work with a parent and start to develop for them a homeschool curriculum for their family and for their child or their children, what I like to do is meet with the parent one-on-one and have them start by envisioning where do they see their child at the end of this journey. So however long you are thinking of homeschooling for, whether it's a year or whether it's throughout all of elementary or even throughout high school, where do you see your child at the end of that journey is the starting place. And then we're going to plot a plan for how do we get them from where they are today to how do we get them to that end of that journey. Now, recognizing that totally things are going to, life happens and things change and kids start developing in ways that, sometimes we are not aware of when our children are young and when we first embark on this journey. So it's always flexible. There's always room for flexibility and change. But what we're trying to do is just plot a path to get to that end destination. Where do you see your child at the end of the road? Now, children take all kinds of detours and they don't necessarily stay on the path that we set for them. And that's okay. That's okay. When we put that imagination out into the universe, we are supported by all the forces of the universe to help our child get there. So
I love that.
The reason that we do that isn't necessarily so the child will follow this straight and narrow path that we set for them. The reason that we do that is so that we get the support of the universe to help our children and us bring them to that place that we imagine from the beginning.
Now, if you're a parent who has let's say, kindergartner, and you know that you want to homeschool them from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, would you set that destination or would you do it in increments where it's like, okay, kindergarten to maybe grade 5 or 6 and then middle school and then high school, or like all of it?
So that first imagination is where do I see my child? Now, things like at the end of high school, when they graduate high school, where do I see them? So some of the ideas that might come up for something like that is, well, I want my child to be confident and independent, and I want them to be an independent learner and be able to take over their own education at that point, you know, because education continues throughout the whole lifespan. And once children graduate from high school, more or less, it's up to them from that point on. Parents have very little say. Even if they're a parent who insists that their child goes to college, they enroll them in college, they pay for college and whatever, still, once the child is in college, the parent doesn't have as much access to student records and things like that anymore, right? So it's up to the child to tell the parent how they're doing in school. And so the child really starts to take on the role of the pilot at that moment, you know, the pilot of their lives at that moment. And so when we imagine that endpoint, we're really imagining, like, what do we want them to be capable of? Mm-hmm. How do we want them to stand in the world? Who do we see them becoming, right? So it's kind of those really big picture ideas. And then when we talk about more the nuts and bolts of curriculum, then we can go back into, and we can do more goal setting around, well, where do we need them to get to this year, or where do we need to get to by grade 5 with their knowledge so that they're ready to go on to the middle school subjects? And where do we need to get them to by age 14, basically, so that they're ready to take on that next piece of high school, you know? So we can set those smaller interim goals, but the first picture is, what do you imagine for your child when they graduate high school? What do they look like? Who are they?
Yes, yes. And I think we talked about this before, but that sets your intention. And then even if you were to veer off from homeschooling, and let's say your child decides they're tired of homeschooling, they want to try public school or private school, and they go down that path, you can still have that intention.
Yes.
You know, and it like you said, the universe will just sort of support you regardless of what path they take eventually.
Right, right. That is the idea.
Yeah, I love that. And I also love how when you first meet with a family and you were talking about a homeschooling curriculum, you do sort of a child study as well.
Yes.
And that's unique.
It is unique. You know, child study is something that comes out of Waldorf teaching and Waldorf schools. And the idea of a child study is that the whole faculty of a school will focus some listening and meditative attention on a child. And then if there are particular problems that the teacher is seeing, they can help as a group address maybe those challenges. But also it could just be that the teacher is seeing a beautiful, balanced, well-formed child, and they're holding that image as a group to support the work of all of the teachers in all of their classes, right? So that's the idea of a child study, is similar in that we're really kind of holding the being of the child, who the child is, and our purpose would be to address any challenges that they might be having, or also to help them continue on a good, solid path that they've begun, you know, if that's where they are.
And then when you are creating a curriculum and working with parents, do you incorporate, you know, everything that you know between movement, Waldorf, child development, all of that into that curriculum?
Yes, we will bring, we can talk about all of that. We do incorporate, we try to look at the child as a whole being, right? What does their movement look like now? How coordinated are they? What area, do they have any areas that they need help with in their physical body and their physical coordination? And then what do they look like in their social emotional health, right? We want the social emotional picture, the physical picture, and also the mental intellectual picture, as well as the spiritual picture. So we're trying to look at that whole being of the child and bring then elements of all of those parts of education and all of those parts of of my knowledge base and the parents' knowledge base combined, you know, because we're working together as partners.
Right. Yeah, and I like that you're always able to direct people to resources for more if they need assistance in other directions as well. So that's
Sure.
really helpful.
Yeah, and that's a key component because I don't know everything. The parent doesn't know everything. We've each had our own paths, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something we're seeing in the child that might need another set of eyes or another pair of hands to help with. And
Yeah.
so knowing people that do a wide range of modalities to help both in healing, in, you know, health and wellness fields, as well as in other educational aspects, educational parts. Sometimes we might bring in an educational psychologist. Sometimes we might bring in someone in the health and wellness field, someone who does energy work, or someone who does some hands-on, like the Handle method, like a holistic neuroplasticity kind of work, you know. So I try to keep tabs on and know people that do things in these variety of fields so that when we need that support, we can find it.
Yes, and eventually, hopefully, they'll find their way out to Perfect Child. So that'll all be there.
Yes.
Now let's move on to math, your favorite topic.
It's always been my favorite subject. When I was a kid in school, I think I feel like that math was the one subject where I really could tell how I was doing. And I knew all the time how I was doing in that subject. Whereas if I wrote an English paper or I wrote a history paper, sometimes it was a little more subjective. It was a little more, my grade would be based on how did the teacher like the paper, right? And
yes.
So it always felt a little less like I could pinpoint it, like you could pin down what the grade is. Whereas math is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you put it that way, because it's true. That's a true gauge of
Yes.
whether you know the subject or not.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so given that, like, would you weave this in a child developmental perspective? Like, why is it important for children, particularly adolescents, to learn, if not master, math? Not just for that gauge, but what else developmentally?
Well, math is kind of it's the basis of most of the sciences, right? It's the basis of physics, especially, also the basics of chemistry to some degree. And believe it or not, it really is the basis of biology and the natural world as well. Because once you get to a place where you can study higher level mathematics, you recognize that it is kind of the underlying, it follows all of the natural laws all the time. There are no exceptions to the natural law. And
right.
Gives us a picture of what that natural law is.
Mm-hmm.
Becomes a little more comprehensible, a little more understandable as a human being. And so in that, it's also the basis of things you might study as an adult, like quantum physics or something, you know. So there's math components to all of those things. And so that's fascinating. You know, there is a subject in math called sacred geometry, and that's where we see math connecting with the natural world quite a lot. And
very cool.
Pattern and all the shapes and all the, you know, everything that you see outside your door when you look outside and you look at a tree or you look at a plant, a flower, or a succulent or something, you see the pattern.
Which we see on your website.
And you see that on the Tutors Table website as well. Yeah. So it really is, you know, that's the sacred geometry kind of helps hold everything together, hold our whole universe together. So that is fascinating to me. Then we can also see patterns in the numbers. And as we work with numbers and we learn how to work with numbers more efficiently, more effectively. So really it's helping children find this way to work with numbers more efficiently and effectively. so that one, they can go into whatever higher study, higher field they want. And also for practical life, because there is a practical side of math, right? Everybody has to know how to keep track of how much money they have in their accounts.
Right. Balance a checkbook.
Balance a checkbook, deal with interest rates. And because if you're going to work with loans or credit cards, you need to understand interest rates. You also want to understand about statistics and statistical curves and things like that for the investment world. And so math touches almost every other area of study that you might go into.
Right, it actually does. And even when I think about the extracurricular subjects, you know, like cooking, baking, woodworking, any
Robotics.
of that. Robotics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So besides that, I mean, beside like the technical aspect of learning math and building a strong foundation, would you say that it supports socio-emotional growth in any way or intelligence at all?
I think it supports intelligence quite a lot, right? It supports the child's developing intelligence because as they grow and they see the pattern and the number and they start to see how math connects to all of their other subjects and they see the connections in the world and how it connects to maybe what they might want to study in the future, then they really have a good foundation for becoming a lifelong learner, right? So that it supports very well. As far as the social emotional development, you know, a lot of times people who are really good at math, their friends might say, "Oh, you're such a math geek, right? You're such a geek." And I kind of wear that title with pride, and some of my friends wear that title with pride. But I also encourage students to, you know, it's not about whether it's cool to be good at math or it's not cool to be good at math or whatever. Really, it's important that you learn how to engage with people and how to listen to people and how to listen. Listening is such an important thing. And I think that also is true in the study of math. You have to really listen. A problem that a lot of kids come to tutoring with is I can't do word problems. I have a hard time with word problems. And I hear this every day, almost every day. I can't do word problems. That's my weakness. And, you know, so the answer to that really is, okay, read the problem. Maybe read it again. Listen to what the words say. Listen to it, right? Now, can you tell me the story of that word problem in your own words? Can you tell it to me in a different way? What's it really saying? Don't just read the words and, you know, words are just building blocks in a way, but what is the picture that forms? Can you draw the picture? Can you tell me the story in your own words? So we try to find ways for kids to get into the word problem and find their own path to the solution, right? So that's really, and as we guide kids to do that, to find their own path to the solution, that really is supporting their overall growth as a human being throughout their lifetime. Because, you know, when you get out of school, how many times are you going to have to find your way to a solution from a really uncertain place to begin with?
Yeah, and I mean, math is sort of a finite, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but it's like a finite form, but the way to get to it, there are different ways to get to that answer, right? Which I've seen, and it's mind-boggling. And
Yes.
so sometimes I think you've told me before where, you know, a student will tell you how they got to an answer and you're also like, oh, I've never seen it that way, but it works. And so it's right.
Yeah. Right. As long as I can follow the student's logic, right?
Yeah.
Like in their English class or their writing class, and they're learning to write an argument, right? They're learning to make a claim, then defend that claim with evidence, support what they wrote, right? They're learning to do that, make an argument. It's the same thing in math. It's the logic. It's can I follow the logic of their argument, right? So their argument is how they solved the problem. And there is a path through that. Can we follow the logic of how they solved the problem? And is the logic, does the logic follow the laws of nature, basically, right? Does the logic follow the rules of math? Follows all the rules of math and they got to the right answer through that process, then awesome, that's great. What we might do is, if that process is very long and convoluted, we might try to make it more efficient and show more efficient ways that they can get there, but they're not wrong.
Right. I think that's what's fun about the homeschooling journey, because, and what you're saying about listening, because oftentimes when my daughter comes to me and says, how do I do this math problem? I would say, oh, we just do this and this because of this. But if I were to take the pause and say, okay, how would you do it? And what does it mean to you? Then maybe her brain works in a different way and she would get to it in a different way. And it's right as well. Then that supports her going forward, because she's not adjusting the way she's thinking to what we know.
Not only is she not adjusting to what we know, but also she's exercising her own thinking capacity. And in doing that, you know, thinking is actually hard work. When you really think, it's pretty exhausting. I mean, it's almost as exhausting as if you went whitewater rafting and you were paddling through, you know, class 5 rapids. It's really hard. But when the child exercises their thinking and they start to find at least an opening of how they can begin to access the problem, then we can kind of start to guide them along that path of their thinking, right? They're practicing doing the hard work of thinking. So we're encouraging them to develop that kind of a work ethic where they can do it.
Yes.
Encouraging them that they can do it. You know, we're giving them the message that I know you can do this, you got this, you don't have to do it my way, you can do it. And the more we give children that message, the more confidence they develop as they grow into adults.
Yes.
Yes. And we do things for them, they might like that because that's the easy way out.
Right, right. And it's easier for us to do that because that's what we're familiar with.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, I think once before you had told me that when a child comes to you with that hasn't quite learned their math foundations, you're able to take them back to relearn their math foundation. And it's not a super arduous or long process, but that's something that you offer.
Yes.
Right?
We definitely go back and try to fill gaps. If there are gaps in their understanding, and the places where I find the most gaps are times tables because they didn't practice them enough the first time around. Fractions, because again, similarly, they didn't maybe practice them enough the first time around, but also they're not always aware that fractions are a division problem, right? That setting up a fraction means divided by. And so once we gain this understanding of all you're doing is taking that top number and dividing it by the bottom number, once we build that conceptual understanding, then they can start to work with fractions easier as they get bigger. A lot of students though will get that, but then they want to plug it into a calculator all the time. And they want to take the fraction and they want to divide it. You know, so if you do 2 divided by 3, you get a repeating decimal. Well, repeating decimals are not that easy to work with most of the time in math. So it's easier to work with the fraction. Easier to work with the concept of the fraction. So that's another thing, another hurdle that, you know, I often have to jump over with kids, is help them to recognize that, you know, there are times when it's easier to work with the fraction and there are times that it's easier to work with the decimal. So which time is this, you know?
Oh, that's a nice approach. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what I love giving kids about math, is just this deeper understanding of why. A lot of kids that come to me, also the reason they come is because their parents call me up and say, you know, he wants to know why about everything, and I don't know how to answer him.
And so you're able to provide that. Well, you're able to help them come to it on their own.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have a new offering on your website, the Math Lab.
I
This
do.
is something new that we've not seen anywhere, right?
Yeah, I don't really think it's very prevalent. I do, there are, so you might think of comparing it to something like like one of those, a mathnasium place or a Kumho place, where they do a lot of math drill and they have small group classes, and they might help kids in small groups and things like that. But Math Study Lab is really designed, it's not designed to necessarily be a full-on enrichment experience, but it's kind of a combination of enrichment and getting your questions answered. What are your questions about the math that you're studying in your class that you can't answer, that your parents aren't able to help you with, that you need someone to help you with, but you can't ever seem to get the teacher's attention to ask your question in class or to ask the teacher for one-on-one help, but you need somebody to help you and help explain this to you a little better. So what Math Study Lab does is it provides a small group environment where we start out with teaching the kids some study skills that are directly related to how to study math. And then that's like a 10 or 15 minute little segment, short mini lesson at the beginning of the Math Study Lab. And then after that, the study lab breaks into small groups of like just 5 students per group with a tutor with them in their small group to help answer whatever the questions are that they're encountering in the work that they're doing in their classes, help them understand what they're doing on a deeper level. And then sometimes maybe understand what they're doing and take it to the next level. So they get at least an introduction to how do you take that to the next stage, to the next phase.
And you make sure that all the kids in the study lab are around the same sort of math skill.
Well, the study labs are set up for particular stage ages or particular classes that they might be taking.
Like
so,
algebra.
Like Algebra 1 or Algebra 2, or, I call it Advanced Algebra or Algebra 1 or Pre-Algebra. So if kids are in a Pre-Algebra or maybe even just an 8th grade math class, they might come into the Pre-Algebra Math Study Lab, and that would be geared towards whatever they're working on in their math class. And then the Algebra 1 Study Lab is going to be a step above that. The Advanced Algebra is going to be a step or 2 above that, right? So, and then we may, as they grow and develop, we hope to offer them even in subjects like geometry or maybe or maybe pre-calculus or calculus. So as they take hold and people start to understand what Math Study Lab is, they come in and find value in it and work with it. And as they grow, then we want to add these other areas of math, and maybe even at the other end, like 5th or 6th grade math.
Yeah, I was just going to say, does it go below, algebra, pre-algebra?
Yes. So, I mean, down to about 3rd grade level, when kids start multiplication tables, when they really are working with their multiplication tables and they're really working with building arithmetic facts, we may have labs that go down to that level.
And then in these labs, are the kids interacting with each other to maybe give advice or, exchange ideas?
Well, yes. I mean, in some ways that'll be up to the tutor that's in the room with them.
Okay.
And hopefully the tutor who's in the room with them can guide them in that. But that would be the idea, is that hopefully they can get the kids working together and answering each other's questions. Because if one child can answer another child's question and they get validation because they know they're correct, and the tutor validates that they're explaining it well, as they teach it to someone else, they learn it better themselves.
Right.
So that is definitely a way that environment can be very supportive of learning for kids.
Okay, so the math study labs, do you just sign up for one, or are they in a group, like groups, like one a month or one a week, or how does that work?
Right. I mean, you can go on my website at thetutorstable.com and you can just sign up for a single individual lab to try it out, or you can sign up for a group of, I think I have them grouped, like you can get, it's sort of like a punch card where you can get like 5 at a time,
Okay.
sessions at a time. It's good to probably stick with them consecutively if you
I
do,
would think so.
because it will, you know, you'll stay with that range of topics for a time before the topic totally changes.
Right, right. And it just kind of supports your overall sort of math
Right.
skills.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
imagine one class would not be sufficient.
I would think, although I hope, and my plan is, I hope that you will get value out of even just one class, especially if it's a particularly hard area that you just have questions in and you need a little extra help to push past that topic.
Great. Okay, so that's one unique thing from your website. Anything else that's unique that you want to talk about?
Well, the Tutors Table is looking to hire some tutors. We're getting pretty busy and full, and we're looking to bring on some new tutors. You know, hopefully tutors who are like-minded in their approach to teaching math. Students, I would love to hire college students.
Oh.
If you're a college student, and you don't have to be necessarily a math major, but if you're good at math and you like math, and you're a college student and maybe you're a science major, or maybe, you know, you're a history major or whatever, but as long as you like math and you're good at it and you can help teach it to other kids, to younger kids, and it's, you know, as a college students need jobs, right? So
Right.
part-time jobs, but I really am interested in bringing on board some college students to help with the tutoring of the math study labs, and also private individual tutoring.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
I'll have to put out call out for that for you.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Anything else you'd like to add?
You know, summer is a great time. Parents who are homeschooling, summer is a great time to start to think about and plan for next year. So as we are approaching summer, this would be a good time to make a plan to have a discovery call and see if we want to do some one-on-one coaching for your curriculum for your homeschool child and your homeschool situation. And envision that picture of your child at the end of your journey, at the end of their journey through high school, at least, you know, let's do that visioning process. Let's put some things into place to support your child over the summer, but especially for when school starts in the fall.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that on our website, your introductory sort of homeschooling curriculum overview is still on there. So if they want to take a quick little peek, listen to it, and then get an idea of what you're offering, and then contact you directly.
Yes, absolutely. Excellent. And the best way to contact me is just go to www.thetutorstable.com. That's my website, and you'll find all these offerings on the website, as well as you can contact me through email. It's Tami@thetutorstable.com. Tami is Tami. And I think those are the best ways to contact me right now to get in touch.
Great. And I'll put those all in our notes as well when the video
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tami. This was really fun.
Thank you, Belinda. I think it was really fun too, and excellent questions. Thank you for letting me share some of my knowledge and expertise. It's a lot of fun to talk to you and to share the ideas that I'm working on.
I mean, every time I talk to you, I feel like I want to go do some math, and I'm not really a math person. You make it sound so appealing.
Well, and if your child needs help with math, then that's what they get too when they work with me. So it is my joy to help people understand that math is not a big scary subject. It's not a scary monster. It's something that everybody can understand.
Yeah. And when you do understand it, it's quite joyful.
Yes, I think so.
All right. Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thank you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.